Deus Ex Mankind Divided was released in 2016, 5 years after its predecessor, Deus Ex Human Revolution. Human Revolution was overall a big success. The PC version on Metacritic has 19 out of 100 score from critics and 8.5 user score, which definitely shows how well it was received. Within 2 months, in November 2011, the number of sold copies has reached 2.18 million, which was definitely a deciding factor for Square Enix to give Eidos Montreal a green light to start the production of the successor after they have finished The Missing Link, a DLC for Human Revolution. According to Jean-François Degas, the executive game director for Deus Ex Mankind Divided, the sequel was planned to be more action-focused, in order to make it as satisfying as the stealth was in Human Revolution, and improving those parts which didn't work so well and polishing those which did. I will discuss this later while talking about the gameplay. The game was also built on a completely new Dawn engine that was built from the scratch for Mankind Divided, which also added to 5 years of development time. The engine technology chosen for the project was the one from the Glacier 2 engine used in Hetman Absolution, because of how easy it was to create the AI behavior there. On the other hand, some other developers have stated that its long development was due to the death of the script they were going for. Mankind Divided didn't receive such a warm welcome, but you can't really call neither of these scores bad. If I'm being honest, they did a fantastic job considering how many times Square has been throwing logs under their feet during the production process. And yes, we need to talk about this, because of the decisions of Square Enix, this game failed commercially, to the point where not only we didn't receive the final part of the new Deus Ex trilogy in last 7 years, but it also partially led to the deal on May 2022, where Square got rid of their Western IPs such as Tomb Raider, Thief, Legacy of Kain, as I said before, Deus Ex, to the Embracer Group. There are some news that Eidos Montreal is working on a new Deus Ex title, so hopefully we will finally see the end of Adam Jensen's trilogy one day. But first, before discussing the game itself, let's talk about Square Enix and the game's promotional campaign, or rather, how monumental failure it was. On April 2015, the announcement trailer was released and it was great. I've seen it on the same day and it made me hyped. I downloaded the app just to listen to the trailer's soundtrack, it was that good. Basically, I had it on loop and the trailer overall was received well. The campaign was going for a while, and then on September 2015, Square has decided to launch the Augment Your Pre-Order campaign, and oh boy, it was horrible. Basically, as you can see, the main idea was kind of like crowdfunding, except made by a huge corporation and without any regrets or self-reflection. The more pre-orders they would get, the more rewards those pre-ordering would get, and the last tier was, get this, it comes out 4 days earlier. Wow, so awesome, Square. Thank you, what an awesome campaign. It was definitely a great idea to... Oh. Well, you reap what you sow, I guess. Also, I like how Wikipedia calls it original. Overall, after this, the campaign was more or less fine. That is, until they released the Mechanical Apartheid live-action trailer, which in itself was good. However, the usage of the word apartheid in the context of this game still leaves a bad taste in my mouth, and after that they showed and released promotional artwork with a banner saying Orcs Lives Matter, which in both cases seems to me as just a case of not fully understanding the complex real-life issues by either Square or somebody else, and just trying to use the terms which will simply provoke more reactions, instead of really addressing any issue, and a weird attempt to make the game deeper than it is. After all this, Square decided, once again as Square do, to make things worse and act surprised when it doesn't work. One of the developers at Eidos Montreal who got in contact with Jim Stephanie Sterling said that, suddenly, 2 weeks before the game's approval, they got contacted by Square Enix London that they have some additional stuff to do before the release, And that thing was microtransactions. Yes, microtransactions. For a single player game. Not only that, they were single use only, which meant that basically all the items you get during your first ever playthrough are forever bound to that one single save file, and you won't be able to use them again. They won't get replenished on the second playthrough. They later specified that this only works like that for what the game counts as consumables, but still, anti-consumer is the least that you could call it. It is also kind of ironic that the game which tells you a story about greedy mega corporations includes microtransactions added to the game under the pressure of the greedy mega corporation. Now, you possibly think, okay, this is pretty bad. This can't possibly go any more wrong than this, right? And that's where you are wrong, to some degree at least. Let me present you the Breach mode, the mode added to the game for the sole purpose to just get a little bit of money from those happy to play a mediocre at best game, which is mostly reusing some of the parts made for the main campaign, but makes them about 10,000 times more boring because of its dull presentation and aggressively pushed pay-to-win mechanics. I've already given this abomination more screen time than it actually deserves, so let's just get into more interesting stuff. The game itself. When trying to launch a new game, Mankind Divided offers you a 12-minute long recap of the events from its prequel, so you can always watch this if you decide to play the game for yourself. If not, I will try to make it quick. If you don't want to hear any of this, just skip this part and go to here. But you might miss a few jokes. In Human Revolution, we play as Adam Jensen, the head of security at Sarif Industries, an American company producing augmentations not only for civilian but also military use. His ex was a neuroscientist who discovered how to streamline the augmentation technology, which would make it not only safe but also cheap. But before she could present her research, a known group of mercenaries attacked Sarif HQ. Megan got kidnapped, and Adam himself was brutally maimed while trying to stop the assailants. By order of David Sarif, Adam got saved by being augmented against his will and undergo half a year-long process of getting used to his new body. After this, Adam gets called again to put his new shiny ass to good use by suppressing the purest attack on one of Sarif's facilities, when he finds out that one of the attackers was augmented, and while trying to download classified information, he himself got hacked and killed himself in the process. After a little bit of digging, it turns out that the same mercenaries who attacked Sarif 6 months ago were hiding nearby. While infiltrating, Adam kills one of them, the guy named Barrett, who decides to tell Jensen, for some reason, that the hacker he's looking for lives in Hengsha Island in China. Adam, of course, decides to follow the lead and contacts the hacker himself. Van Bruggen, that's the hacker's name, went into hiding after forcing the purest hacker to his demise, which, as he expected, was a great mistake, the kind of mistake after which his partners started looking for him, and definitely not to talk about pre-ordering a new Square Enix game.
We would like to play.
Jensen manages to save the hacker, who pays his debt by giving up the person who hired him, a woman called Zhao Yun-ru, the president of Taeyong Medical, which is Sarif Industries' competition in the field of augmentations. Her plan was to destabilize other corporations, which would also make them easier to take control of, but also she reveals that her role is minuscule in a bigger game controlled by the Illuminati. Then, Jensen, in a really stupid way, gets clowned on.
Gotcha, you dumb bitch.
But he also learns that apparently all of the kidnapped scientists had tracking devices on them, which had been shut down, and someone at Picus, which is the biggest news network on the planet, might know more. Jensen decides to fly to Picus HQ in Montreal to find more info. He reaches Eliza's office, where she willingly admitted to jamming the satellites over Detroit on the day when Megan and scientists were kidnapped. Then, Eliza says that Jensen's visit didn't go unnoticed and disappears. Her signal leads to the underground server, where Adam learns that Eliza in reality is a sophisticated AI made to monitor data streams, which would make it easier to control people's opinion according to what the Illuminati wants them to believe. Before he can learn more about the kidnapped scientists, the second of the three tyrants shows up, Fedorova. After dealing with her, Eliza shows a recording where Dr. Ezekiel Sandoval was contacted by one of the tyrants before the attack that he will have to remove the tracking implants sooner than he expected. Also, she reveals that apparently David Sarif knows more than he admits to. In the meantime, the tensions between augmented and non-augmented citizens have reached their peak, and the riots broke out in many cities around the world. Jensen returns to Detroit to talk with Sarif again, but when he comes back, Sarif is already at Adam's apartment. During their conversation, David confides to Adam that the Illuminati were after him for trying to push the borders of human evolution, something which they didn't want to happen. Apparently, Dr. Ezekiel Sandoval, who removed the tracking devices, was working for Bill Taggart, who founded the Humanity Front, and decides to contact him to find a place where Sandoval is hiding. In his hideout, Ezekiel admits that he was operating on the scientists, but didn't remove the tracking devices, but just changed their frequency. Adam wants to report the situation to Sarif, but instead of David, he sees Hugh Darrow, the father of mechanical augmentation in Deus Ex's world. A little bit later, David comes back to his office and tells Adam to continue his search, because Pritchard, Sarif's head of the cybersecurity, managed to track one of the signals to Hengsha. Naturally, with Sarif's help, Jensen flies back there to continue his investigation, but the VTOL he was flying gets shot down. Due to his pilot skills, they manage to land somewhat safely. In the meantime, WHO issues an emergency recall notice that the biochips of every augmented person need immediate replacement to avoid severe medical issues. The tracked signal, however, led to triads. Their leader, Tong, tells Jensen that the signal comes from the arm that is now a part of his body, and they have taken it off from one of the Sarif scientists' corpse that the PMC bell tower left at their doorstep. They knew, however, that every once in a while, Bell Tower's ship sails to some unknown place where they were taking kidnapped people to use them in what is called as the Hiron Project, which was basically a supercomputer, which was using human brain power to think abstractly and use them as a storage for data that the computer has collected. Adam gets into a cryochamber, which takes him into a military base. This is where the Missing Link DLC takes place, but nothing significant to the overall plot happens there. Jensen slips into another ship, which takes him to another facility led by the Illuminati called the Omega Ranch. This is where they kept the three alive scientists and Adam's ex, Megan. To get to the place where the Illuminati are keeping her, our protagonist has to be the last remaining member of the Tyrants, and after that finds Megan in Hugh Darrow's suit. Then, Adam learns from Megan that Darrow decided to sabotage the biochip tech that the Illuminati wanted to use to limit the potential of all the augmentations. The most important plot point that you actually need to know is the AUG accident, or to be specific, how it happened and where. All of the previous plot points conclude when Hugh Darrow decides that he will turn on the signal, which made all of the augmented people around the world suffer from hallucinations and go insane, attacking every single person in their path. When asked by Jensen, he states that his technology has become yet another means of control over the people, and by doing all of this, the world will finally learn how dangerous it is, and the whole mankind will have to reject it and return to monkey or something.
I look at this monkey.
You might be surprised why I changed the mood of the whole situation so suddenly, but if Jensen has the social augmentation, it appears that Darrow was just really salty that he cannot use the technology he developed. So that's why he has done all of this, which really makes the whole scene weak. And it shouldn't have taken place, really. It makes him just a pathetic asshole who can't cope with the situation that has developed in front of his eyes.
I can't move it anymore.
Jensen now has to shut off the Harem project by killing Zhao Yanru, which is currently connected to the machine. After this, we have an ending, which was probably a great inspiration for the developers of Mass Effect 3.
Thank you guys, I don't want my decisions don't matter at all.
Which ending is canon? All of them. And none of them, according to devs at least. But right now, you might ask, why did I need all this lore dump? Well, it is not surprising that the sequel tries to continue the plot of its predecessor. We'll come back to Mankind Divided's themes and plot later. Mankind Divided takes place 2 years after the Og incident, in the year 2029. 6 months ago, Adam joined Interpol, or to be more specific, Prague's division of Task Force 29, which is an anti-terrorist unit. His team gets mobilized to capture an arms dealer known as Shepard in Dubai, who will meet with undercover Interpol agent named Arun Sin, and we need to keep both his life and his cover safe. This is where we take control over Adam for the first time. During your first in-game cutscene, just like in Human Revolution, you can choose your weapon of preference for the first mission. We can choose from lethal or non-lethal weapons, and if you prefer to go with something with more range, or if you want to go more close and personal. At first glance, the basic gameplay hasn't changed much from Human Revolution. First thing that people who played it will notice here is that the energy bar is no longer divided into parts, but it is a whole bar, and the one with your current health doesn't show any numerical values, which is somewhat odd, but it wasn't an issue to me because I was playing stealth character throughout the whole game. Well, that doesn't work anymore. They've also added crafting mechanics into the game which allows you to craft consumables, such as biocells, multi-tools, ammo for your combat augmentations, and other stuff, which is neat. However, I don't think I've ever used it even once in my playthroughs. Another interesting thing here is that during the Dubai mission, we have most of the augmentations already unlocked, which definitely helps the player to understand organically by playing what abilities Adam has and what they do. This also makes the choice of the preferred build much easier. For example, in one part, you might use a rebreather to go through an area covered by toxins. You can grab some high ledges by using the jump mode. We have to use the Icarus landing system to get quickly to the battlefield that takes place in front of us. This whole mission really plays like a tutorial, but it still gives some freedom in how you want to approach your objectives. Oh hey, event! You can choose stealth approach, you can choose direct confrontation and shooting your path to the objective. Every single option here is viable. Oh, another event. You can, for example, choose not to knock out this guard, but just go to the other part of the corridor by jumping on those pillar fragments. After a while, we reach our objective, and during the cutscene, the arm deal goes wrong, and we're getting third-partied by some unknown augmented attackers wearing golden masks. Everything gets pretty exciting because of the approaching sandstorm, which obstructs our view, the ongoing battle, but also because of how much the mobility of our augmented opponents has been improved. This is also a pretty nice showcase of the new abilities of the augmented enemies. They can dash or they might disappear by using stealth cloak augmentation. On the other hand, difficulty seems to only change how much incoming damage you get. Enemies don't seem to get any smarter. However, they might spot you faster and from a bigger distance. Another thing which changes on the Give Me Deus Ex difficulty is that you will not see any quest markers as a part of your HUD. They only show on your map, which usually isn't a problem, but it might be somewhat frustrating at times. For example, One of the side quests requires you to put the guy's unconscious body into a locker, but the game itself doesn't tell where it is, as if you would know it already, and I would if not for the fact that I'm unable to check the whole map. Instead, I'm restricted to the current map. I can switch floors here, but I can't check where exactly is that godforsaken locker. I could go outside the compound and check the general map there, but quest markers changes every time I stop dragging the body to show where the body is, instead of a locker. The last noticeable change is that crosshair is no longer a part of your HUD, and you have to rely on either your weapon's sights or laser. Without it, you will always shoot in the general direction of your enemy, but you won't be 100% sure where you are aiming at, unless you know where the center of your monitor is at all times. Jumping can be also problematic from time to time. You want to crouch to get into a vent, but you need to press your jump button again to get inside, and it is very common. This in itself isn't game breaking, but it could be irritating at times when you need some amount of precision to jump into a ledge, but what happens is Adam either won't grab it or you will do this small jump and you fall down. Falling from the ledges where you think you are safe could also happen. You have to aim your jump perfectly to avoid falling to your death. There is also dash ability, which some people might remember from Dishonored, and this worked well there. However, here, if you want to get into a higher position, it is unreliable at best. Conversation challenges from Human Revolution also return here. They've already been pretty neat back then, and they keep the same level of quality. Another thing which seems to be rarely praised is that the new Deus Ex games use the dialogue wheel, which is usually known from Bioware games, but it is way improved. Not only they are not always in the same order, which in Mass Effect it would be in the descending order from high to bottom. Good guy, neutral, choosing which usually gives you nothing at all, or bad guy, which leads to the problem of clicking one option dozens of times to always get the good or bad response. Not only that, Eidos Montreal has also fixed the issue where the wheel just describes the general emotion that your character will speak with right now. Both in Human Revolution and here in MD, you are presented with your dialogue from the get-go. No more playing the guessing game. You always know what Adam will say if you decide to choose this option. This makes you, the player, be fully in control of your character and to pick dialogue options judging by the other person's character, where your social augmentation greatly helps or their previous responses. Some people might not like the fact that Manga Divided still uses the knockout cutscenes, and you have no melee fighting option compared to 2001 original Deus Ex, and the main issue here is that they take control out of the player. This is understandable, however, it never bothered me in Human Revolution, and it's not a problem here. As long as this might solve some bugs and other issues, I think I can live with that. What really grinds my gears are those fucking hacking minigames.
I have a question for God. Why?
They get stale so quickly. They are not satisfying. They give you barely anything most of the time. Why are they here, honestly? The only thing they are really good at is wasting your time. At least, they've changed one thing from Human Revolution, and that is, when you acquire a password, code, or whatever, you will receive the same amount of experience points as if you would hack it. Everything else is as tedious as it was before, which I can't understand at all. What were they thinking? Let's talk about something more pleasant. Level design has also undergone some significant improvements at the cost of the size of the game's main hub. Right now, your only main hub between the main plot missions is Prague. It might not be nearly as big as maps in other RPGs, but it's packed to the brim with interesting content and exceptional environmental storytelling, which is still hardly matched by other RPGs and immersive sims. The only somewhat recent titles where these aspects were on the same level which came to my mind are Dishonored 2, Prey, and Cyberpunk 2077. Nothing else has come close enough. Basically, every single flat in the game can tell you a small story of some sort by just checking what's inside. When you enter a flat which belongs to our boss, Jim Miller, you can't miss a huge Australian flag on the wall. You can see pictures from which you can learn that at some point he used to be a cyclist, or maybe he still is. Upstairs, there are his family pictures, and downstairs, you can find his petition for divorce and for custody, which really tells you a lot about him. Here's a flat which stores huge amounts of drugs, probably to sell them. Ignore the bodies on the ground. Here you can see a flat which belongs to somebody obsessed with the cult of the machine god, which made him to design this complicated machinery, which plans you can see drawn all over the wall. Because of the AUG incident, we can find a shut down limb clinic, which has written anti-AUG insults all over it, which is interesting to see those in such a decrepit state.
Go home, Clank.
Excuse me for a sec.
Those Augs are pretty quiet, Clank. Know what would be even more quiet? If you weren't around here.
You can go inside it and find hidden praxis kit and some notes hidden under the roof, which is really neat. Basically, the game hides plenty of useful items and pieces of lore, which encourages exploration and looting areas to find something new. If you see a balcony, you can climb it and get inside the flat connected to it. In this particular flat, I've found that whoever lives here is stalking me and my partner from the Juggernaut Collective. I decided to investigate this, and I got into an area marked on the map. At first, I couldn't see the guy taking pictures from the roof, but when I found him, I decided to go and talk with him. Then, I've learned that Adam is his primary suspect in the case of bombing of the Ruzicka train station, because he has seen both me and my companion Alex at the same day when the tragedy happened. He survived without a scratch, which made him feel traumatized that he couldn't do anything to stop this, and so many people died that day. So he decided to take matters into his own hands and to stalk us around the city as he remembered us, suspiciously looking augmented people. We can learn all of this as long as we keep calm and try to explain the situation to him, after which he understands his mistake and leaves us in peace. This was a pretty unique and memorable experience, which wouldn't have happened if not for my own curiosity and checking the environment to learn something interesting. The environment itself is not only aesthetically and visually pleasing to your eye, but also really makes you immersed in the world and craving to learn and see more. The way in which the architecture of Old Prague is merged with the cyberpunk themes is still really fresh, even after those 7 years since the game has been released. Wherever you go, you will always find something unique to see or check. For example, near the landing zone from which you usually start your main plot missions, you enter a puppet shop, which in itself is interesting to see. But then, you go through the back door and you witness a hidden workshop. You can't miss it really, but it still makes you wondering if Chicane is working on this plane in his free time, or how it even got in here. All of these questions are unanswered inside the game, but it is still nice to see that somebody has put all this work to add more details to the game's world. There is also another layer to the game world. We can be the witness of many forms of persecution used by the police against the augmented people and systemic oppression used by the law, such as benches with naturals only written on them. But also other places, like the metro queue is segregated into naturals and augmented. We can completely ignore those, as nobody really reacts when we go through a checkpoint from the naturals side. But when we got into the wrong compartment of the subway car our documents will be checked on our arrival at the station. However, there is literally no consequence of doing it. You will be simply annoyed until you will comply, just not to see this cutscene ever again. Also, our own documents can be checked on the street from time to time, but only when the game decides to do so. These elements aren't revolutionary to the whole narration, but they are still interesting and authentic enough to at least feel just a little bit like we are a part of this world and not its savior with special benefits. The last thing in this segment of the video is a vertical gameplay, or rather, how much improved it is now compared to Human Revolution. Previously, your main way of going through the level as a stealth character was usually using vents, and at times you could use jump mode or Icarus landing system, but you would use those augmentations pretty rarely. Now, jump mode is way more useful, as you have way more opportunities to get to the high ground like roofs, near ceilings, etc. Sure, vents are still very, very common, but at least the game gives you much more room to experiment and find a path you might like. Icarus landing system, however, is way underused here. I finished the whole game and I've used it only 2 times. Once during the Dubai mission at the beginning, where I literally had to use it to go down quickly enough, and the other time was during the last main plot mission in the game, and even that wasn't really that useful. I could have just called the elevator. I've heard that some players have been complaining about the energy mechanic in the game, which was probably added on purpose so the scarcity mechanics could work well, and you won't be able to do one most effective thing over and over again. That's developers telling you to use more tools in your possession, rather than just using a single trick. They just want you to diversify somewhat, to experiment, and in my opinion, that works well most of the time. Sure, it doesn't make much sense from the narration point of view, because why would anyone get augmented if they have to take a drug to not have symptoms of aug rejection, but also use biocells to do some things? You know what? I have a better question. How the fuck does Adam optic device glasses or whatever? Now I would like to address both main and side quests in the game. If you don't want any spoilers, go to here. Okay, let's get back to the Dubai mission. At the end of it, the approaching desert storm catches our team. Jensen gets hit by it, and we can witness his famous cursed face from the Human Revolution trailer. Then, we get the actual intro, which is very cinematic and done well, and also has a little bit of info dump about the current state of the world. Then, we have a cutscene about plotting members of the Illuminati and of course, Bob Page. Nothing significant happens here really. They just talk about the events in Dubai and voting for Human Restoration Act, which they want to pass. In general, Human Restoration Act is all about restricting the augmentations, removal of all that are too powerful or unlicensed, the requirement of having a control chip inserted, and having papers at all times that would describe their augs in detail. Basically, the Illuminati want to have the full control over the technology and everyone that uses it. Unless you play the 2001 original, you won't know who exactly all of those people are, with the only exception of Bob, which had a few lines in Human Revolution's intro and the secret conversation with Megan after credits. After that, Jensen wakes up in the train heading for Prague. He arrives at the Rizika train station, minutes before it gets blown up by unknown terrorists. But before that, he meets with his colleague from the Juggernaut Collective, Alex Vege. They talk a little, their documents got checked, and the game crashed. Okay, we need to talk for a while about some technical issues. On my PC, the game was pretty unstable. This previous crash was the second one that happened to me during most recent playthrough, but this is only due to me learning that restricting the amount of my CPU threads to 8 for Mankind Divided's application can do the trick. This has fixed both the game crashes but also the infinite loading screens that happened to me a few times when I forgot to set the affinity for the app. After that, the game was working fine overall. The performance was usually over 80 FPS up to 130, but that was only due to me setting everything that I could to the max. Regarding FPS or other issues, your mileage may vary from what I've learned. I recommend checking PC Gaming Wiki for any fixes, as I'm not sure if YouTube will let me put the link in the description. It's time to get back to the main plot. After the attack, Adam wakes up in his apartment and needs his augmentations checked because his system is acting weird. To do that, we need to contact AUG specialist Václav Koller. However, it is not that simple. The bookstore called the Time Machine, which hides his black market clinic, is under siege by local criminal gang, the Dvalis. Unless we want to approach Dvalis thugs face to face and start fighting, we need to find another way to the bookstore. This leads us to the checkpoint set up in the alley. At the checkpoint, the policeman named Drahomir tells us that we can't go any further without the proper permit. He gives us an offer that we can go to one of his men and they will sell us the necessary paperwork to go through. This, as we can guess, is a scam, made in order to squeeze the augmented people out of their money, as if their situation wasn't bad already. We can play along and go to the man Drahomir told us to go, or we can decline and find a way around him. It is very close in fact, and it's not really that hard to go through. But it is less than optimal. The checkpoint stays, and we have to crawl every single time to get to the other side. So I decided to investigate this whole matter and talk to the document agent. He charges us a ridiculous price of 35,000 credits to buy the permit. Obviously, we don't have that much money, so we can either give him 35 credits and tell him to fuck off, which actually takes us nowhere, or get in touch with the forger herself. So I decided to stick around, knock out 2 guards inside, and crouch through the vent to Milena. She tells us that she wanted to help her augmented friends by preparing forged papers to whoever needs them, but things got out of control. One day, Drahomir and his thugs find out she was forging the papers and threatened her that she will either start working for him or he will kill her. After that, he has set up the whole operation, which would make him money and Milena his hostage. She asks for our help to dismantle Drahomir's operation. Adam could take the matters into his hands or ask the police for help. At the same time, she says that there is also something else that we could do to help others by giving permits and activating them at the permit station and adding them to the city database. So first, I decided to deal with the checkpoint and have my AUGs fixed, and I went to the police officer pointed by Milena, and I turned in Drahomir by saying that he is guilty of kidnapping and coercion, after which the police officer decided to take matters into her hands and opens fire at our fake officer and his boys. The police kills them, and that takes care of the checkpoint. Now I'm free to go to the time machine. Before that, of course, there is also the matter of the permits, so I wanted to give them first before going to fix my augmentation system. I met with Irenka Bauer first. She seems to suffer from dissociative identity disorder as a way of coping mechanism with her current situation. I gave her the permit and warned her that it is not activated yet, and she needs to prepare herself for the worst. Okay, time to go to Edward. When we get to him, he's being mugged by some guy. I knocked him out and talked with Edward. He tells me that he was expecting some kind of help from his daughter to get the permit. I asked him to tell me more about his current situation. He describes me a terrible picture, that his son-in-law keeps the family away from him, because during the AUG incident, he killed his youngest grandchild before the signal has stopped. He still feels guilty of the events of that day and tries to cope with all this by thinking that it couldn't be him that has done all of those terrible things. I told him that he has to accept what happened, and it's the people behind the signal that should be held accountable. I've also refused the payment. His situation is tough enough already. No need for me to receive any money from him. It's high time for me to activate the permits. I knocked out the guards and turned on the permit station. Suddenly, we learn that we can only validate one of the permits, and we have to choose who will be able to roam somewhat free on the streets of Prague, and who, most probably, will end up in a ghetto called Utulek. It is a pretty tough decision, and essentially we have about 10 seconds to choose anyone. I have chosen Edward, but only because the game has given me more info about his life before the accident, and I was worried he might not survive for long there.
Good. Edward's documents should hold up to any kind of scanning check now. He's as legit as he can be, without actually being legit.
I came here to help two people.
It doesn't always work that way. Look, you need to get out of there, please.
Milena, that permit I wasn't able to scan. What happens to Irenka now?
She probably ends up in Golem. Or she gets arrested for trying to use fake documentation. Thrown into a cell somewhere. I don't know. Doesn't exactly feel like a win, does it?
No, it doesn't.
We did the best we could. Listen, thanks for being one of the good guys.
I couldn't have said it better myself. What I like the most about this quest is that you discover it while trying to do your main quest, which means that you will have to learn about it either way, and from now on, it is up to you what you will do with the checkpoint and the permits for Edward and Irenka. There are also other side quests, which are even more interesting than this one. However, I don't want to spoil all of them too much, so I will just throw a few themes that you may find. For example, one of the side quests involves Adam trying to solve a murder mystery, doing favors for a local the Valley criminal organization, or confronting the religious leader of a cult hidden in the Prague sewers. From now on, I would like to focus on the main questline only. If you don't want main story spoilers, go to here. So, let's finally go to Václav to fix our system. As I've mentioned before, the bookstore is under siege, which means we need to go in somehow. I have chosen to jump into a ledge, and from that, go through the window on the second floor. Knock out a few thugs, got inside the workshop. Caller tells me to sit down on the chair, and he will take a look on my systems. So we wake up after the reset. We almost go fried on the chair. However, now we have an access to new experimental augs. We have also lost most our unlocked augs, so basically, we start from the scratch once again. To use one of these prototypes, we have to sacrifice or deactivate one of the augs we probably won't use at all. Later, before the end of the game, we might get an upgrade, which will let us use all of the augs we want, including those we have just lost access to by deactivating them. Long story short, we don't know who or when installed these in our body, and we might find out later. Now we can finally go to our Task Force 29 base of operations. Our HQ is hidden under a shipping company, Praha Dolos. The entrance is hidden in the backrooms, where we can find an elevator. When we get there, we receive a message from Alex to install a whisper chip on the neural subnet of Task Force 29. To do that, we need a keycard, and from a nearby pocket secretary, we learn that it is somewhere in the server room downstairs. So we head down, the door is locked with a keypad, so I decided to find another way and... hey, a convenient vent shaft. I picked up the key from there and unlocked the door. Install the chip, and whoopsie daisy! Miller is using an asset right now and calls us to get in his office immediately. Then, we learn that the state police don't want Interpol to investigate the bombing of the train station. So, our boss sends us there to find more info. Miller has important business to attend to in his fort right now, so we might as well do what he asked. This joke took me 20 minutes to set up. Please subscribe. Our limo arrives at the metro station and takes us to our destination, where we meet our forensic specialist. He tells us that he got accused of tampering with evidence, and that somewhere there lies valuable data about the blast area that has to be picked up, but there are plenty of cops there, so we need to Jensen our way in and grab the intel. So we need to find our way inside, and we might take a few routes, one of which, of course, includes some venting and conveniently placed boxes and other structures. Well, I'm not complaining, it is what it is. We take pretty much the same way back to the metro station and go back to our HQ. When we reach the metro station, we get a message from Miller, giving us an order to go to the Golem City, aka Utulak. But before that, we need to give the evidence to Smiley and meet with Task Force 29 psychiatrist, so she can make sure that we are not made of stupid. Man, I love taking money and her painkillers from the therapist. I mean in game, not in real life. So she asks us a few questions about our past, and we're getting this.
Are you asking me or telling me?
Which would you prefer? Not everyone's as familiar with US history as you Americans would like to believe, you know.
Where are you from, Doc?
We're discussing your file, remember?
Sure, nothing suspicious.
You sussy baka!
After making sure that we are not dumb in the head or something, she gives us a green light to do our task. Then, we head for our meeting with Alex, because she has found some audio recording from NSN. Apparently, the director of Task Force 29, Joseph Manderley, wants to pin the blame on the Augmented Rights Coalition for all recent terrorist attacks, and Jim Miller is not happy about this. Still, nothing interesting comes from this discussion, so it is time to finally go to the landing zone. Jim wants us to capture the leader of ARC, Talos Rucker, from Golem City and interrogate him. We get there, and the situation is pretty rough to say the least. Many augmented people suffer from the lack of neuropozyne, and we can learn more about the situation here from the local doctor.
You look like you still have an ounce of chivalry in you. Maybe you could break my neck for me? Or smother me with a blanket? I'd prefer if it were quick, and if there was no physical damage. I'd very much like my children to identify my body. It's been so long since they've seen me.
Well, there is that. Trying to talk with our contact in Utulak gives us nothing, as the police has already taken him, so we need to talk to him in the slumber. He gives us a few options to get into ARC's area. We can free his brother, and he gives us a phrase to repeat to a guy near an elevator, and he unlocks the entrance to the lift for us. We can knock out the police officer who took Tibor's keycard and take it from him, or do a favor for a local smuggler, Louis Galois. Whatever we do, we get upstairs. And there, we meet with Heavy from Team Fortress 2. Marchenko. We talk, nothing interesting comes out of it. Tibor snitches on us to ARC soldiers, and we can confront him about this. Slowly but surely, we make our way to Talos. Then, we have a conversation challenge with Rucker. He doesn't want to go, as he is afraid that if he leaves his safe haven, somebody will make him disappear. We can try to convince him to go with us peacefully, but he tells us that someone else within his organization is less committed to the peaceful approach. I'm wondering who that might be. I convinced him, and he gives me a keycard to the door holding the proof for his theory. Sadly, he gets poisoned, and obviously we cannot take him into custody. We can, of course, take his proof with us, and I did exactly that. This honestly takes us nowhere in the end. The only thing we learned from this is that the poison and the order to use it came probably from Joseph Manderley. We leave Golem City with a prime suspect basically, but Jensen still says that he has
Nothing more than a gut feeling, so far.
Well, I don't know about... We contact Vega about the death of Rucker, and she sends us to Miller's apartment to search for anything useful there while he is gone, meeting with the state police. In the secret room, we find Jim's NSN keycard, so we can access his last messages in his Task Force 29 office. Before that, we meet in an alleyway with Alex. We give her Rucker's evidence, and we learn that it is not the first time that a poison like this was used, and that we plan to use Miller's NSN chair. So we head for the HQ, and there, first, we meet with our forensic expert. He tells us that the timing mechanism for the bomb was just an ordinary wristwatch made here in Prague. He sends us to contact the watchmaker, Nomad Stanek, because he will perhaps shed some more light on the case. But before that, let's use the chair. So basically, this whole sequence is breach mode, but luckily, it's short and pretty simple. We listen to the Miller and Mannerly's conversation we already know, but after that, Mannerly contacts Bob Page, and we learn that our suspicion is correct, and the usage of the orchid was approved first by Bob and then Joseph. Also, they want to do something about Nathaniel Brown, who is lobbying hard against the Human Restoration Act, and he has enough money and power to ruin the Illuminati's plan. Then we find out that our psychiatrist is also in the office, and she acts super suspicious again.
So you answer directly to Joseph Manderley?
It was Joe's idea to get a psychological clinic up and running inside our field offices. But listen, Adam, I have a small mountain of agent files to process, so if there isn't anything else...
Joe, huh? Sounds like you and Manderley are close.
We're close because I used his first name?
Well, you said you joined TF-29 after the incident. I assume that maybe you and Manderley started together when the task force was launched.
No, I arrived after Joe did. Look, Adam, we should probably get out of here, don't you think?
Yeah, no way she could be a mole and she tracks every single move of Adam. This couldn't be it. Stanek's shop outside is blown up, so we definitely have to go to his apartment. Well, that doesn't look good. I found a secret room with some bomb-making equipment, and a computer with a message from Nomads to his daughter Addison, asking her to come and see him in a bar in the red light district. We met Stanek there, and he at first says he doesn't know how to make bombs, and the tools belong to his daughter, and wants to take the blame to protect her. Allison's father also tells us that she was in the military, in the bomb squad, and met some augmented people that convinced her to join them. She didn't meet her father in the bar. Instead, someone else has come to say goodbye in her name, spewing some insults at Nomad. Now he wants to help her, instead of going with Interpol investigators. Our agents took him, and now we also received a call from Alex that the leader of the Juggernaut collective, Janus, wants to meet with us. The terrorist attack investigation is now on hold, so we might as well meet with him to gather some info. When Adam comes to the meeting, he gains some info that VersaLife, the company that has developed the Orchid, has a corporate vault at the Palisade Property Bank nearby, and Janus wants us to get there. Jensen tries to learn more from Janus, but their connection is cut, and we have to leave immediately while being looked for by the police drones. After we get out from the sewers, Nomad contacts us.
They're going to kill her. I gave your friends the slip, and when I got to here...
Where?
The Prakaska district, an apartment complex behind the laundromat. Please, hurry.
So I was heading for the metro station, and suddenly Alex contacts me.
Adam, you okay? Those drones...
I'm fine. Whoever sent them didn't succeed.
Thank God for that. Listen, Janus just called. VersaLife is closing their account, moving everything out of that data vault tonight. This can't wait. You gotta get over there now.
I can't. I found the bomb maker. She can tell us everything. But she's about to be killed.
What? Shit, man, they're cleaning up loose ends. I can't break into a bank, not by myself. And if we don't do this now, we lose the Orchid. Fuck!
But if I don't go to the Prokazka district, the bomb maker dies, and we're back to square one.
Your call, man.
This seems like a hard choice, but here's the thing. Whatever you are choosing now, successfully completing this part makes you obtain one of two things: neutralizing enzyme for Orchid or bomb diffusing device from Allison. Both of these things buy more time during the last mission. Essentially, the choice here comes down to what in your opinion seems more important to you, and choosing that. However, Allison's part can be done within 15 minutes if you know what you are doing, and you lose the chance of taking part in a really awesome bank robbery in one of the best designed locations in the game. Also, both of them will give you a lead for GARM facility. For sake of continuity, I will discuss both routes, starting with Allison's Stanek first. We meet with Nomad in front of the Church of the Machine Gun, and we have to get to the 3rd floor and talk to Allison directly. With Jump Mod, it is a pretty simple thing to do, and doesn't take long as I said before. So we meet with her there, and Allison is preparing for what she calls as the Ascension. We have seen something like this in a flat near to ours, but also in Panchaea, the Project Hyron to be specific. So, if we manage to convince her, we get the previously mentioned diffusing device, and she gets arrested by the Interpol agents. But if we decide to go to VersaLife corporate vault, we need to get a keycard hidden in the trunk of a car parked in the garage near Palisade Bank. We get there, knock out the guards, take the card. Now we just have to add the biometric data to it. Luckily, I've infiltrated the bank before, which makes things easier, and I have the keycard needed to access the elevator to the 3rd floor, where we can find the encryptor we need. Now we just need to go to the elevator leading to the corporate vaults and do the magic. After reaching the vault, we need to deactivate the security measures on our way to the keycard reader, and that will call the vault we need. I'll let you watch the cutscene, because this is straight to the point.
Janus, can you hear me?
Yes, the link is weak, but I can strengthen it.
Wait, what are you doing?
The data rod contains a seeker program. It's flagging everything it finds on Project Orchid and sending it to me.
Wait, that's an audio file. Can I hear it?
Hello?
Bob, it's Megan. Those Orchid samples you told my new assistant to send to Switzerland?
I asked him not to bother you with that.
It's okay. I told him he could. But it's just... I've never heard of this GARM facility before.
A recent acquisition. I'll have to take you there someday.
That's not necessary. Listen, the changes we make to the Orchid's Cas enzymes, they're incredibly dangerous. Until we perfect the replacement-based fragment, GARM's researchers must keep a neutralizing enzyme on hand.
I've read your reports, Megan. I know all about the failures of the CRISPR molecule. I'm even keeping a sample of the neutralizer inside a secure vault in case your research gets corrupted.
You are?
Trust me, you have nothing to worry about.
Thank you. I just wanted to be sure this time. Good night, Bob.
Good night, my dear.
Megan.
Dr. Reed, you seem disappointed. She joined VersaLife shortly before Seraph Industries closed. I assumed you knew.
I don't suppose you know anything about this facility in Switzerland.
GARM? I've been digging into it ever since your ex said the name. It was a geological research center until 2025, when Bell Tower Associates bought it. They didn't list it on their balance sheet when they filed for bankruptcy.
Yeah. I guess they also forgot to mention the Spec Ops unit that went AWOL. I have to get to GARM.
What are you thinking?
I'm thinking about the augmented mercs who ambushed us in Dubai. If Paige sent them the Orchid.
That's everything. Unless they're storing something physical in there. Either way, I suggest you leave soon. With the vault in that position, you should be able to exit through the shaft. Good luck, Mr. Jensen. And please don't forget the data rod when you leave.
After the cutscene, we can open the safe and take the neutralizing enzymes for the orchid with us, and this will be useful later. By the way, in this and other corporate vaults, we can find some truly interesting stuff. Not only every single one of them has new information that we can only find here, but also some loot with consumables, money, a free praxis kit, and an unique assault rifle. All of this, as long as we were searching every nook and cranny, and now we have all the keycards we need to access them. Anyway, whatever we have chosen, our next lead is Garm facility in the Alps. Soon after our arrival, we get ambushed by Marchenko and his men. We're getting poisoned with the orchid and learn that our friend will have a meeting with the Dvali in Prague. The rest of this mission is basically trying to get out, while the Golden Masks are leaving the facility. When we get to Prague, we can see that because of the riots, the martial law has been declared, and the entire city is under curfew. No one is allowed in the streets, but the police forces. We meet with Alex in the abandoned limb clinic again to talk with her for a bit. Anyway, we need to go to the Dvali. Here's the thing, if we have done the favors for Othar, he says that he is in our debt, which means that now we can just go to the theater and contact him without his men being hostile. That's actually really nice. However, to achieve that, Louis in the Golem City has to die, because without it, a bug might occur where Radic is still in power, and the game wrongly thinks that we haven't done the favors to Othar, and that also means that Kolar might die without upgrading our system to Windows 7. In any case, I've reached Othar, and he says this.
Now about that favor you owe me.
With pleasure. Name it.
Viktor Marchenko. Radic was selling weapons to his terrorist group.
Yes. Of all the shameful things in Radic's life, assisting those animals was the worst. The last thing he did for them was smuggle weapons and supplies into London. They're going to attack Santo's Og thing at Apex Center.
The Safe Harbor Convention, why would they do that?
I do not waste time wondering about the motives of disgusting lunatics. You are planning to stop them. I wish you success.
In our apartment, we are basically getting a confirmation that Brown is really important, and we must protect him, because he is the only chance that the Human Restoration Act won't pass. Also, the orchid isn't actually a bioweapon. So, it is high time to go to London and stop Marchenko. We talk to Brown, but he doesn't want to cancel the event, thinking that all of the security measures are working as intended. Soon, we learn how wrong he is. The pool of blood on the wall behind the guy in the reception literally can be a better proof that the terrorists are already here. After a while, we find bodies of the Tarvas security men without their uniforms, and Miller orders us to activate the security override and to take out the fake security guards quietly in the reception hall. We also need to find the keycard to the catering area. We clear the way there, and Miller gets poisoned with the orchid. Luckily, I have the orchid neutralizing enzyme, so I used it to save Miller's life. From this moment, the mission has a time limit, but I can take care of everything else pretty easily, and after knocking a few guards out, I reach Brown and his guests before they drink the poison. It's time to take care of Marchenko.
Come out!
That was easy.
Now we can celebrate our success.
As shocking as that fact turns out to be, Brown had only this controversial opinion to give.
We must not make rash decisions based on fear, nor should we allow a vocal minority to dictate our future. The Human Restoration Act is a perversion of all the United Nations stands for. In time, I believe saner minds on the Security Council will prevail.
strong words from a man with an even stronger bank account. Let us see if his prediction proves true. This is Eliza.
Hey, are you even listening to this?
Live
We won!
from Pike.
Did we?
We completely disrupted their plan. Marchenko, the Orchid, the bombs. We've been under too long, man. Time to come up for air. Take a breath. Janus messaged me last night, said Brown's been lobbying like a champ. He and the people you saved know the act isn't a solution. Picus will talk around it as long as they can, but that thing is finished.
Janus always seems to have the inside track. Except when it really matters.
What are you thinking?
How many more plans do they have in motion? How many more soldiers like Marchenko are waiting for the call?
Don't call him a soldier. He was a thug, man. Soldiers have a code of honor. Honestly, I'm surprised you let him live.
It wasn't my place to play judge and executioner, Alex. We should be concerned for every life, no matter how badly it's been lived.
Once a cop, always a cop, huh?
Regardless, we want the men behind him. Behind the Human Restoration Act. The ones still out there in the shadows. It's time for me to start pulling them into the light.
Well, now we got names. Manderley and Page. The collective won't stop until we bring these guys down.
Yeah? Well, there's one more name I want to put a face to. Janus.
So that's what you've been chewing on. Look, I'll try, Adam, but I already told you he doesn't like meetings that aren't on his terms.
Then give him a choice. Either he sets up a meeting, face to face, or I find him myself. I think it's high time we met the man behind the mask, Alex. Don't you?
Criminals may have achieved the impossible in Prague last week. A break-in at the most secure data archiving facility in the world. According to rumors circulating...
We received a newsreel with all important things we have done during the playthrough. It's nice, but... that was it? Oh wait, the Illuminati molding that we have stopped their plans.
Elizabeth sends her regards.
Guess who's here? Surprise, surprise! Okay, now we can start complaining. This ending isn't nearly as bad as the ending in Human Revolution, but it is truly disappointing and happens so abruptly that it really feels like the game is missing a pretty big chunk of the main plot. I wouldn't be surprised if that was true, considering that some sources state that during the production of Mankind Divided, there was another team making the sequel, but the devs were pulled from the project to aid the MD team to get the game released on February 2016. This plan failed. The game was released on August of the same year. Eidos Montreal was definitely going somewhere with the plot, and it's pretty sad that we didn't see its conclusion in such a long time. It gets unveiled in a pretty interesting way. The pacing is good overall, but the payoff at the end is way too small to feel any sense of satisfaction. You are literally getting ready for more, and Mankind Divided is not a perfect game. It is flawed here and there, the main plots end suddenly, some mechanics don't work nearly as great as they could, but at the same time, it perfects Human Revolution's gameplay formula and adds enough new content so you can choose your preferred approach and have fun during every single playthrough. The amount of small details that were necessary to add to the game is still outstanding, even in 2023. The game is aesthetically pleasing to your senses, the music is simply great, and this greatly helps to get immersed in the world. There is so much to see and enough to do that you will not get bored like with older open worlds nowadays, which have way too much content that's usually also very repetitive. Should you buy it in 2023? Well, of course not for the full price, but when it's on sale? Definitely pick it up and give it a chance. I don't think you would regret it. Even after its failed advertising campaign, with dubious microtransaction practices put into the game under the influence of Square Enix, which luckily doesn't own the franchise anymore, and worthless addition of the bridge mode, the best you can do is to let it go, and still check it out, as it is truly a title worthy of being called Deus Ex. Thank you so much for watching. I know that my mic quality might not be consistent, as I've been recording this on a microphone added to my headphones, and well, I hope that my voice is overall okay. If not, then maybe at least you will like my editing and the jokes I've added. All the likes and subscriptions are greatly appreciated, as this took me about a month to finish, and that's literally my first long-form video, so I know that it might be rough. Anyway, you can also check my Twitch. I like to stream some games there from time to time. Maybe you will find them entertaining. At least, I hope so. You can find all the links I can give in the pinned comment under this video, as, again, I don't think that YouTube will allow me to give the links in the description, so if you find any of this interesting, please go there. Again, I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye everyone! The nature is truly fascinating.